we are going to have, there are possibilities that people would, who are script writers will further be engaged, and possibly a selection process will take place for those who have good scripts, and there will be some movement to the United States thereafter. So this afternoon, on behalf of the Nigerian Film Corporation, I don't know, Mr. Philip Gilpin, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and we can hear you. So because of the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe if you see the crowd, the way they are seated, we have to comply with safety protocols. In terms of distance, I don't know whether you can see that.
No, I can just see you, but hi, everybody.
Okay, but can you see the crowd now? The audience?
Oh, yeah. Hello. I wish I was there with you all.
Okay, so we are going to go straight. The Managing Director, Chief Executive, Dr. Chidi Amadweke, will speak after your presentation. Towards the end of your presentation, I'll bring him in, then he will speak. But for now, we are going to have two discussants. After your presentation, they may make one or two interventions. We have Stephen Osezwa and we have Madam Peace Anyam Osiwe. They are in the house, so they will also listen, take notes. Maybe after your presentation, they may make one or two interventions. Then we'll ask the people in the audience to ask you questions, and maybe you answer them, and then we take it from there. So for now, you have the floor, so you can start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I wish I was there with you all today. Looking forward to moving beyond COVID. My name is Philip Gilpin Jr. I am the CEO and Executive Director here at the Catalyst Story Institute. And before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to the Nigerian Film Corporation, to Dr. Chiada, to Bella over at the embassy, and Aubrey at the State Department, and Estone and Jeremiah for putting all this together, making it happen. We produce an annual festival once a year. I know how difficult it can be. It's impressive that you're able to do this globally. So thank you for having me here today. I have been working in the television side of the industry for almost 20 years now. And I want to share with you today one of the most important things I've learned about what it takes to start your own episodic television series production. And it goes to the heart of one of the major difficulties that most content creators around the world tell us that they experience these days, which is, why does it seem so much more difficult not just to create and produce your own independent episodic series, but also get it seen by the industry, have it bought, and get it distributed so that it can be seen by others. And there's a very simple reason for that, and I want to share that with you today, and share also some solutions to that problem that you can use as you move forward in your own careers. So to start with, I want to show you some slides from the most recent Institute event that we had. So Catalyst is a year-round institute. And as was mentioned, we work with writers on scripts. We work with producers on producing their series. We help directors, actors, and we try to bring everybody together so that the most amount of people can create the most amount of independent series. There are a lot of artists out there like you with great ideas, and they should all be created, and they should all be seen, and they should all be heard. And that's what we're here to aim to do. So these are some examples of what happens at our institute. You have meetings and classes and writings and panel discussions. But the reason I start with this slide, and the reason that this is the most important, is because television in particular, especially independent television, is a very relationship-based business. It's very one-on-one. It isn't just a situation where you create something and you sell it like maybe you would with a film. But with television, you need to build relationships that are going to last years, sometimes decades. And so that's why you'll notice on the industry meetings, what's happening there is at each of those tables, you have a content creator and you have an industry person. It could be a producer, it could be an executive, but somebody who might be interested in buying or creating their project. And that is the end goal that we have with this partnership with the embassy in Nigeria, is to help figure out how many of you want to make TV series and help figure out how many of you should come here at some point to the US in order to sit down in a meeting and meet with people from the television industry here. These are some photos from the festival from 2019. There were about 1,200 television people that show up from all around the world. And again, it's all about creating opportunities to build relationships. So what is the key difference between creating an independent series versus making an independent film? And this is really the entire point of what I want to talk about today. So I've been a content creator. I've been a writer and a director myself as well before I got involved in the business side of the industry. So I know what creators want. I've been there. And as a content creator, what's happening right now is because of our phones and because of the internet, we are now able to create our own shows and series with very little money sometimes, unlike 15 years ago where that was not possible. So the notion of picking up a phone and creating your own series is still a very new concept, and our large global industry hasn't quite fully adapted to it yet. There are still some barriers there, and that's part of what we're working to break down. But as a content creator, our goal is we want to make our series, and so sometimes we take all the money we have, we save up all the money we have, and we hire a team to go produce our show. And we use all of our talents, all of our money, and we call in all of our favors, right? We call up all of our friends and ask if they'll do work for free, if they'll help drive around, if they'll help be in the production, right? You know how difficult a production can be to create and how many favors you have to ask for. So we go through that exhausting process. And of course, our natural next question is, okay, I've made my show. Now, how do I sell it? And how do I distribute it? A great example of this that happens often in the film side of the industry is you hear about places like Sundance or Tribeca or Zuma and other festivals where creators will come together and they'll have made a completed film and then they sell that film to a distributor. Well, that doesn't happen with television and it doesn't happen with series. And the reason it doesn't work that way is very simply because series are not films. From an artistic level, when you sit down to start creating your series, you are creating something that is vastly different than creating a film from an artistic perspective, right? So think about it. When you start writing your series, you're not just writing about one or two main characters. You're writing about an entire story world that these characters live in. And unlike when you're making a film where maybe your film is only 60 minutes or 90 minutes long and it has a 3 or 4 acts to it and it has a set structure and it has set plot points, when you sit down to create a television series, you don't know how the story is going to go. You haven't written all the scripts yet. When I was working at HBO and they would make these large series like The Sopranos or Sex and the Cities or 6 Feet Under, the screenwriter and the show creator, they don't come in with every episode and every script written, right, for 100 episodes, because when you start a series, you don't know how many years and how many episodes you're going to be asked to produce. So that is a very different economic situation and production situation than when you go to create a film, because when you make a film, you know exactly how long it's going to be. You know just about exactly how much money you need. You know just about how long it's going to take you to produce it. You know none of those things when you go to create a television series. And so that's the reason that creating a series independently can sometimes seem so more difficult and different than when you're creating a film. For example, when films are finished, that is a product that you can take to a marketplace or a festival and sell. And the person buying it doesn't have to ask you questions like, well, how do I know if the film's any good? How do I know if you're a good writer? How do I know if I like the way that you directed it? How do I know what happens next in the show? Because they can just watch the film. It's done. But when you create a series, you have to answer all those questions. So unlike when you're selling a film and you're saying to somebody, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Film Buyer, give me some money and I'll give you my film. Maybe you have a good relationship with the people buying your film. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't really care. It's a business transaction and you just want to sell your film and they buy it. Great. Maybe you work with them again. Maybe you don't. When you sit down with somebody and ask them to give you money to create a television series, you are asking them to give you potentially millions, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars over 5, 7, 10 years. That's a very different business request than simply, hi, will you give me some money for this film I've already completed? You're asking them to trust that you know how to handle the money, that you're going to be able to create a good show, that you're going to be able to write all the episodes, that you're going to be able to oversee the production for all the crew. There could be hundreds, maybe thousands of crews on some of these bigger series. So you can see how instantly it's a very different process. Imagine if you went to a bank and said, I want to build a hotel. And they said, okay, can we see the blueprints for the hotel? And you said, well, we don't really know what it is yet, but we have a sense of what it looks like, and we think we know how tall it's going to be, and we think we know how long it's going to take us to build it. The bank would probably not be partners with you on that. That's what it's like when you're building a series. And that's why it's so important that independent television creators focus on building relationships first and building that larger story world, as opposed to just focusing on a simple thing like a one character and a plot point. So when you look into the process and the cost of creating an episodic series, it can feel like a never-ending game. I know as a writer and as a creator, it can be extremely frustrating because the idea that we have for our show and the love that we have for the characters that we've created in our imagination, we understand it right away, right? You wake up in the morning and you start writing it down, and it makes complete sense to you. And you already love the story world. You can visualize the whole thing. But actually taking that idea out of your head and getting it into a financed production on the episodic side can take a long time. It can take years. There were some projects when I was working at the studio where there were very famous people who would come in with an idea for a show, people that we all know. And sometimes it would take them 10 years between the time they first pitched their project and the series was completed and produced. And these were famous people that have done plenty of projects before. So pitching and selling your project can sometimes feel like it's an endless clock, like it's a game that's just never going to end. And there are three main components in the process of making your series. The first one, after you go in and you pitch your series to somebody and they give you the green light and say, yes, we want to work with you on this series. The first thing that happens is you go into the development process. And the development process is where you sit in a room. Sometimes it can be 7 people, sometimes it can be 20 people. And all you do is you have all these ideas for storylines. What does episode 1 of season 1 look like? Episode 2, 3, 4. What does season 2 look like? What does season 3 look like maybe? Or maybe you just focus on the first season. It's called a writer's room. And you sit down and you do what's called breaking the story. And breaking the story is where you figure out those episode by episode components of the show. And then once you've figured out the larger theme and process of the show, then the writers go in and they actually start writing the dialogue. So unlike a film where the first thing that the writer does is sit down at a computer and start writing the dialogue and the characters and the script, that is not the first thing that happens with the television series. First of all, the biggest difference is it's usually not one writer. It's a room of writers. So all these writers have to work together and get on the same page. There's typically a lead writer, which is called the showrunner, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that's a very big difference between a film and a series, one writer versus many writers. And some shows that go into the development process, they never make it out of the room. Sometimes the studio or the network that is paying you to sit there and write out this series, sometimes 6 months goes by and they say, yeah, we just don't like where this series is headed. Thank you very much for your time. We're not going to move forward to actually producing this show. It's very common. But if your show is able to make it through the development process, and that process can go on sometimes for years, where you and your writing team will create episodes and you'll send them to the network will give you notes back, and you just do this constant back and forth process of receiving notes. If you make it through all of that and they say, yes, we want to start the physical production process, that's where you start getting into a lot of big time and money. So you go through the physical production process. For independent creators that aren't doing a network show, sometimes your crews can be as small as 4 or 5 people, just friends and family. Maybe you have a couple dozen people that you're working with. And then after you've shot all the footage, you go into post-production and you start editing it together. One of the interesting things about producing and directing and editing a television series that's different from a film is television series will often have different directors for different episodes. So unlike a film where you have one director, series will have many directors working at once. So I might be directing episode 1, you're directing episode 2, and while I'm shooting here in Duluth, Minnesota, episode 1, you're there in Nigeria shooting footage for episode 2. And they have to match and they have to come together in the editing room. So again, that's where that top producer, that top writer called the showrunner, that person's job is to oversee all the different episodes that are writing and directing and editing all at once. So after I shoot episode 1 here and you shoot episode 2 there, then I'm going to move on to 3 and you're going to move on to 4. But in the meantime, we have to also go into the editing bay and we have to start editing together our individual episodes before we send them to the network. So you can see how it instantly gets a lot more complicated very quickly. I say all of that to be very honest with you about the expectation of time. I know that we live in a social media age. I know that we live in an age of 30-second videos and point and shoot on our phones, and that's great. But when it comes to creating a television series, you have to expect that it's going to take you at least 2 to 3 years just to get from the time that you first visualize the characters and visualize the show before you even get on set and start producing. It's very, very important for you to be honest with yourself about that time length. And the reason is I've seen many, many independent television projects who get very excited about their idea and they gather together their friends and they go out and they start shooting and they get 6 months in and it's not working out the way that they want. And all of a sudden things start to break down. And after you've asked your friends and family and professional contacts to give you 6 months of their time and nothing comes out of it, people get angry. You potentially lose those relationships. And so again, it goes back to the relationship building game. And it's important that you're honest with yourself and your cast and your crew before you start getting into the process of making a series that it's going to be a long-term game. It's why our Catalyst Story Institute operates on a year-round basis. And it's why our program is a 2-year program for those that accelerate through the process. And then even after you get out of our process and you're paired up with a professional within the industry, it then will probably take you another year or 2 to advance your series on the industry side. So it's pretty common for it to take 3 years from the time that you first sit down in a room with somebody to pitch your series and the time you're actually shooting it. Now, before you sit down in that room to pitch your series, just getting into that room might take you a long time. And this is where I'm really excited about what's happening in 2020 and beyond with the advent of digital technology, really changing the way that the Hollywood system works. Because up until about 10 years ago, the Hollywood system was broken, right? It was impossible for anybody who basically didn't live in Los Angeles or New York and didn't already know anybody there to even get a pitch meeting. Now you have organizations like Catalyst, you have others, but also you have the technology to be able to shoot things so you can show small examples of your talent and what your vision looks like. And as we're coming out of the COVID year, one of the interesting things that's happening here in the US is a lot of productions are starting to shoot outside of LA and New York. There's a lot of production obviously happening in Atlanta. They're starting people are starting to look for places around the country and around the world, which is why we are partnering with the embassy and with the State Department on expanding our reach to you. Is people are looking for new voices and talent everywhere. And it's a very exciting time. And that process of getting into a pitch room, one of the little secrets is you no longer have to live in Los Angeles or New York in order to have a career in this industry. You can live where you live. I can live here in Duluth, and we can make it happen. So that's a really exciting change. So to summarize this opening section, I just want to focus and reiterate the fact that it's a relationship-based business. Just don't forget that. That's the core to everything that you're going to do. Sometimes if you end up on a series with a creator, if you're the content creator and you end up selling your series, you could work on that series with people for 10 years, 15 years. You might get married, have children. Those children might go through school. Your families will grow up together. It's a very long-term process, whereas sometimes making a film can just be 6 months or a year and you're done, and you move on to your next project. So having good relationships and working with people that you like and trust is very important. So I'm going to move forward a little bit quicker now because that was really the heart of what I wanted to talk about. But one of the things that always comes up is people ask, well, how do I get a pitch meeting? And don't I need an agent in order to do that, or some type of a manager or representative? And it's important for you to know why agents and managers and representatives exist. Basically, they are legal representatives that help connect and protect studios with content creators. When you sell your show, you are selling what's called the IP, the intellectual property rights. That's the tangible asset that goes onto the contract that somebody's giving you money for. And there are lawyers that get involved with helping you shape that contract and shape the IP. An agent's jobs are to go around and start selling you so that you don't have to individually call up every potential buyer and network and studio. They do that on your behalf. So some of the legal basics you should know: look into the concept of intellectual property and chain of title. That's the thing that you're actually selling. Make sure you have your copyrights and music clearances all done and ready to go. And make sure that if you are using music, that you're using music either you would own or that you created. Because if you make a series that uses other people's music and you try to sell it, people won't buy it. Because they will be afraid of the potential legal consequences of it. Can you get work without an agent? Yes, you absolutely can. It is not a requirement that you need an agent before you make a relationship and start a pitch meeting. So know that. Don't feel like you have to go through this barrier of getting an agent first. It helps you to do one, and if you can get one, great, but it's not required. After you get signed with your agent, there can be two things that happen. One, maybe that person will go out and very aggressively sell you, but maybe they won't. Maybe they already have a large list of clients and they may be a little lazy sometimes, or you might not be the most important client they have on their list. So you should still expect that you're going to have to do a lot of the work yourself after you get signed by an agent and go out and keep making those relationships around the industry. So if there's all this money out there and Netflix and Amazon and Hulu are spending billions of dollars on series, where's yours, right? As creators, if there's so much money out there, how do we get tapped? There are obviously a lot of big studios out there that are all competing against each other. They're all starting to merge together as well. And that's not an accident. But now that the mergers have settled down, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday about HBO Max. They're going to be releasing their films in 2021 online at the same time that they released them in the theaters. That's a major change. So streaming has really opened up the possibility of what people can produce. And keep in mind that even though there's billions of dollars out there and there are people starting to shoot everywhere, production has a time limitation. You can only shoot so many things in a week. You can only shoot so many hours of footage in a day, and that's never going to change. So while it can feel very confusing that there's millions and millions of creators out there making all this content every day, remember that there's still a very unique quality and a unique value in discovering a creator that makes a show that can touch people's hearts and minds and be distributed around the world, because you can only produce things so fast, and that slow production process actually helps make new voices and new content rise through the system. So that's a very large overview of the independent television industry. And sometimes I know it can sound and feel like not what you want to hear, and it doesn't sound very exciting. But please don't despair. It's not hopeless. It is very difficult, but set your expectations, have a solid understanding of what you're getting yourself into. Find any opportunity you can to grow your resume and your experience. That's going to be really important. And remember, there's an interesting thing that happens in the television industry, which is no matter how rich you are, no matter how famous you are, and no matter how many shows you've worked on before, and no matter how many Emmys you've won, when your show ends, you're still unemployed, just like everybody else started. And it's a constant cycle. You get a job, you get the show ends and you're unemployed. You get a new job and you're unemployed. So know that that's going to be the normal process. But don't worry, storytelling isn't going away. Content is king, right? The industry, economic, and business models will constantly shift. There's all kinds of new crazy things happening with AI that are going to start launching in the next few years. But at the heart of it all, no matter where the business goes and how it all swirls around, storytelling is always at the heart of our industry. And that will never, never go away. Original concepts that you dream up are always a gamble for somebody to put money into and to want to produce. A great example of that is, imagine if 30 or so years ago, I came up to you and said, I want you to give me $5 million so I can produce a series about people who fight in space with laser swords. Well, Star Wars, right? So even though sometimes original ideas can seem scary to people when they're first created, all it takes is one or two visionaries, both from the creative side and from the business industry side, to come together, and it can be pretty powerful, and it can change the world for sure. So simplify your process of creating your series through relationships. It's the only way. It's not easy. You will get burned. There will be times when people will fail you, and there probably will be times when you will fail others, but those are learning lessons. You will make lifelong friends and partners through the industry, and nothing's set in stone. So, do what you think is best at the time, because you never know where the industry is going to head next. Here's a link. Make sure you go and look up what showrunners are. They are going to be the people that you need to have attached to your project when you go to make your series. It's important for you to just understand the structure of how showrunners operate. And this is just a quote about the changing media industry that we're living through right now. Obviously, it's in a state of transformation. A lot of the CEOs at the large companies are figuring out the new media industry. They're figuring out how to reach people here in Duluth, how to reach you there in Nigeria. How do they find new voices and new storytellers? And that's going to be going on probably for the rest of our lives, at least. The media industry, while it's big, doesn't act always cohesively and coherently. Remember, they're all competing against each other. So sometimes it can seem like they don't quite know what they're doing, or they're stumbling over why are things taking so long? Don't they obviously see what the future should look like? Don't get frustrated. That is something that is quite common. So to start wrapping up here before we start taking questions, just a few more slides. I just want to go through this list of the difference between film and series. And if there's one slide of this whole presentation that you take out of today, it's this one. And I'll be happy to email this over to folks at the festival so that you can see this and keep this. But remember that the truth about making a series is it's a big risk. And it's a huge risk because you're asking people to give you a lot of money on something you've never proven you can do before. And that storytelling format in a series format means that it's more than just about being talented with a good idea. You have to have a whole network of people around you that believe in you and are willing to support what you're doing. So sometimes as writers, we can get very precious about our ideas, and we can think that the story and the characters that we've created are the best thing ever. And all that matters is that these characters and these storytellers are the ones who move forward in the process. And nothing else matters, and you know best how your show should go. I sorry to tell you, but in the series side, creating a series is, especially writing it, is a collaborative process. You're going to have to deal with other people giving you their ideas, and you're going to have to deal with bending and flexing and working with the people who are financing the series and the other writers who have ideas for where your show should go. That's just the nature of the process. In contrast, when you are making your film, you can basically just, be king, right? You can just be the big person on the top of the hill and direct and tell everybody what you want them to do. So they're very different. They're very different processes. Keep in mind also that the distribution landscape is very difficult in the television side. It hasn't really happened yet that anybody has made an independent television series and sold it directly to a studio or a network, and that show has gone up on air. It happens a lot with like talk shows or local shows or regional type of documentaries. But in terms of a scripted series, nobody's produced an independent comedy or drama yet that has gone on to worldwide broadcast. That's going to happen soon. It's definitely where the industry is headed, but it's just taking the industry a little bit of time to catch up to that notion of buying a series as opposed to producing it themselves. And the open-ended production process, it's been an interesting change, especially in the US market over the last 2 years, where many executives are starting to look more at limited series as opposed to open-ended series. So keep in mind that when you're writing your show and you're creating your pitch idea, that you may have to put a cap on it and narrow it down and just let people know, oh, it's only meant to be 2 seasons, or it's only meant to be 6 episodes, or something like that. That seems to be gaining traction here in the US, as opposed to you pitching a show that's all that you have no idea when it ends and it's open-ended. So just another option to keep in mind. With that, I'll end with this. So at Catalyst, this is our position within the industry. So you have all these places online where people can discover and explore and make content, which is great. When you get to the indie film side of the industry, you have long-standing institutions like Sundance and Cannes and others. When you get to the indie series side, you have Catalyst and a couple others, but we're still very new, right? The independent series side, as I mentioned before, we're only about 15 years old as an industry here. And our job here is to discover you, is to curate your work, and to help advance your career by matching you up with some type of an industry mentor. That is the problem that our industry has, right? That's the problem that most of you have. And it's the problem I had when I started out as a creator, which is we have these wonderful ideas and then we get stuck because we don't live in LA or New York, or we don't have relationships with people who can get it made, or we don't have the money, or we don't have the relationships to be able to get an agent to get a pitch meeting. There's all these barriers that happen right after the first step of the process. And that's why our organization exists, and it's part of the reason that we're here to solve. And it's the reason I'm excited to talk with all of you today. And I can't wait to get over there as soon as COVID allows us to, hopefully in a few months, to see and meet you all, because I want you to know that there is a pathway now through this partnership with the Nigerian Film Corporation, with Catalyst, with the folks at the embassy, for you to have your shows and your projects discovered, to have them curated by industry professionals on our end. And then, as was mentioned at the start, what we're going to do next year is we will be selecting a handful of finalists from Nigeria, from your region, that will be coming here to the festival in Duluth, and to be matched up with industry partners and mentors, so you can start creating those relationships, and we can help you get through that barrier and solve that problem of feeling like sometimes the industry is just so far away. So just to talk a little bit about that process and how that's going to happen. Enrollment for our program is going to open January on our website. It will close the end of March. So in that 90 days, you can go to our website and sign up. It'll start off being, it's free for you to sign up and be considered as part of the program, thanks to the folks in partnership with the State Department. And then what we're going to do over the spring is we are going to go through all the people who enroll, and we're going to look at all your ideas, and we're going to read your scripts, and maybe you've already shot an episode or two of your series. We're going to watch those, and we're going to pick a handful of finalists. And then in the summer, we are going to come to Nigeria, and we are going to host a showcase where we present the winning finalists there with you, and announce who are the ones selected to come to the festival in October here in Duluth next year. So I'm really excited to be there, and I thank you very much for this time. I hope a lot of this information was helpful. This is where I hope to see you all next year, is here in Duluth, having fun with everybody and meeting people around the world. This is, in case you've never seen it, this is where I live. This is where the festival is. This is where our organization is. This is Duluth. It's a city that's on the shore of Lake Superior. So even though it's geographically, we're in Minnesota, which is in the middle of the US, it feels like we're on an ocean, because Lake Superior is massive. It's a beautiful place to be, and we're looking forward to having you here once we can all travel again. So thank you for the time. Here's my email. I know it looks like a generic email because it says office, but it does, a little secret, it does go directly to me. So if you ever want to reach out or have a question, once the application process opens in January, you can reach out to me directly. So thank you again very much for your time. And if you have any questions or want to talk about anything, I'm all yours for a little while until you kick me off the screen. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilpin. Please, let's put our hands together for him again. Before the questions, maybe I would like to call the two discussants of your paper to make one or two comments while possibly they prepare the questions. So
yes, please.
Okay, so Steve, you have just 2 minutes.
Yeah, good evening. That was quite incisive, and I'm sure everyone here will like to take advantage of the opportunities being posed to us. But basically, before now, even I don't think I have, the only thing I have to add here is the title say online, okay, content creators and storytellers. And like he said, I would like to reemphasize some of the things. The way you write web series is not the same way you write for your television series in terms of duration. Because I've seen people here, it's a common practice. You have maybe a 2-hour movie. You now chop them into little pieces. It's not bad, you can do that. But if you want to write that this is web series, you face it. And for my presentation, I think a day or two ago, we saw the attention span, depending on the platform you are consuming from. The same way, the duration and time you give to watching anything on your mobile device is definitely not the same thing when you are watching, the same time you give when you are watching your home TV. So in the same vein, when you are writing, you want to write a web series. There are some things, there are some techniques and tricks. I am doing something, and I pray once we get through it, for a TV series, a 25 minutes television series. What I'm doing, and I just want to know also, maybe that will be my own question, if it's right, is that for every 5 minutes, we have like a cliffhanger. So for the 25 minutes, we have every five minutes, you have a major cliff. In other words, apart from serving as suspense for the TV viewers, I just think that 5 minutes might be what I will take out. I will break it into five minutes for the same thing on web, for the web consumption, for the audience using the mobile devices. So I just want to know if what I'm doing is right or is wrong. That's my own question, basically. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And if you allow me, I want to take a couple minutes to dig in very deep on the details on this, because you asked such an important question. And I work in a very unique position here as the CEO of Catalyst, which is I get to see content. I get to see thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of content from creators all around the world every year. Short, super short, long, too long. I see all of it. And the one thing that I know right now, and this might be a controversial comment, is when you're creating your show, the length is less important than the characters that you're in the story world that you're creating. So I can tell you that when it comes to 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, or formats like 25 minutes, people care less and less now from the television industry side how many minutes each of your episodes is. And that's thanks to streaming. And that's because streaming has broken down those barriers. What's important is that you're not wasting time with your characters, that, it doesn't get boring, right, at any moment. That everything that you write and everything the characters do in every scene is important to moving the story forward. But I would not pressure yourself as a writer to feel like you have to have a right or a wrong answer when it comes to time. You as a writer should feel free to think and create your story world in whatever timeline you want, and in whatever feeling of episodes you want. And because here's the beauty of it, is let's say you make a series and you as the artistic genius have decided 8 minutes is the perfect length for every episode you've written, because that just fits the world and the story you're trying to tell. But then you go to a festival, or you meet a television executive who is interested in your series, and they say, oh, well, we only do things that are 6 minutes long, not 8 minutes long. Well, if you've created a story world around your characters that is so powerful and so strong and so clear to the audience, you will be able to rewrite and remaneuver your characters into any time format anybody asks you for. Right? The perfect example, and I'm a bit of a Star Wars geek. So when you think about Star Wars, that The Mandalorian that is on Disney Plus right now, that took what, 40 years to go between the time George Lucas and his team started making the Star Wars films to the time they're now doing hour-long episode with the characters. It's all in the same story world, and that's what makes it work. And this is why I love working on the TV and the episodic side of the industry instead of film, because in the film world, people will tell you your film has to be exactly 90 minutes long or exactly 80 minutes long. And that's death for, how are you supposed to be creative and let your imagination flow if you know that you have a time limit? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So on the series side, you get to create the world, and then you can go to any buyer. If somebody wants 5 minutes, great. Somebody wants 50 minutes, you can do that too, because you've created this magical world that's so strong and so obvious to you. So I would not start out writing my series worried about how long I make each episode. I would start out writing my series worried solely about how do I make the best moment to moment for each character, and how do I make the best story world around it. Figure out the length of the editing when you're in post-production. Does that make sense?
Well, I think, yes, it makes sense, but it's a little bit different in our own climate here. For every TV program, there's a standard timing. For every TV programs here, you have a standard timing. But I'm saying if I deploy that, permit me to call it trick, at the writing point, in other words, every 5 minutes of it will make sense to be able to stand on its own. Then the collectivity or the 5 minutes in 25 minutes that link each other. I'm talking about a series now. I'm not talking serial. So when you write it like that, and each one, if I want to do webcasting, I won't go and put 25 minutes on the web, because here I think data is also very expensive. But somebody can watch 13 episodes of that. That means times 5, 13 times 5. But they will take their time at their own time. Maybe you go to an office to see someone, they say, hold on, he will soon see you. You can do a quick 5 minutes and you continue the stories from there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the second, I think that's the second part of the writing process, right? I think the first part is what I was just talking about, which is making the larger world. And then absolutely, the second step in that is when you go to actually figure out where to distribute it and when to produce it and who you're making it with. That's the point you have to do what you're saying, which is figure out, okay, this is happening in 5-minute segments. This is happening in 10-minute segments. But I always encourage writers to start without limits, right? You can limit yourself later in the process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Peace, another intervention? Gilpin? Okay. The mic.
Well, for me, I think what is very good about this is the opportunity it gives the content creators within the continent of Africa, and especially Nigerian young filmmakers, the opportunity of trying to work in the international fora and submitting their films, their TV series online to Catalyst and see how it goes. The thing is that when people write series here, most of the time they are not conscious of the fact that they are writing a series. They just write, and then they start to break it down rather than actually write a series and know that you're writing for maybe 20 minutes, etc. And that's part of the problem which a lot of young people have, and a lot of writers generally. So I think one of the issues that they would need to be guided on is what it actually involves in writing specifically for series. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have, is script writing here. What would you say, Stephen?
Thank you very much. So maybe we take questions if you have questions.
Yeah, if I could just respond for 1 second to what she was just saying.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think a great solution to that, and something that we want to work with you on through NFC, is to create writers' rooms. I find that the problem you mentioned is very real, and it is definitely an issue that we see in writers around the world, especially here in the US as well. And the solution to it is, and we want to do this in partnership with you, is to create writers' room experiences so that writers can go through the process of what it's like to specifically take a large story world idea, like I was just talking about a minute ago, and put it down into different time formats. That is something that it sounds like maybe is needed, and we would be happy to come and set up that experience for writers so that we can go through that specific process with you, if that's something you were interested in doing together in the future.
Okay, thank you. So questions, Prof?
The creation of a series is a beginning, like the author mentioned. The creation of the series is the beginning. But in the other aspect of it is the productional level of it. That is, when the series is created, the story you may have the episodes already written. But if you want to do it for television, maybe you get sponsors, like maybe 25, 30 minutes, then maybe you have 2 minutes for advertisement. So that depends on who is the producer. The producer will now tell the writer to break it down, so that the producer will not tell the writer to break it down. That is the director will not tell the writer to break it down. Or if the producer or the director can write very well, he can decide to rewrite it. In fact, when we were at the NTA Sokoto, we had an experience there. When I submitted the script, there was a script editor who looked at the script, and he said, okay, do it this way for the purpose of television. So I think it's more of the timing is more of a productional problem rather than the original creator's problem. And if the original creator have created the episodes, then we need to still have other writers who will be involved in writing more episodes for that particular series. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That is the never-ending constant struggle in creating every television series, and that that is how it goes, and that will continue to be, which is why it's so important that the writer who's creating the story has such a strong, hold on what the show should be like. Yes, there are always going to be push and pull forces between writing and production, and I think that can be very frustrating for some creators. But I think the creators that go into the process expecting that and knowing that, and who are educated on how that works, like you are, you have an advantage, and that's a strong advantage. And it can be very frustrating to hear a television network or somebody tell you how long your episodes need to be and how you should write your show. But that sometimes that can be the process, and it's the reason that it's important. The artist and the writer is 100% always the artist and the writer, and you let the network and the advertisers and the business people, you let them do their thing. But remember this, without the artists and without your story, those business people that are fighting over how long each advertising break should be, they won't have a job because they'd have nothing to put on their television network. So it really comes down to you being strong in what you're creating first. Yeah.
Okay. Second question. Okay, at the back. Okay.
Well, hello.
Hello.
First of all, I definitely have to agree with you that in writing, one should start by pouring out everything that comes to him. Because in reality, creativity a lot of times comes through inspiration. And there are times when you get these inspirations, and the ideas you will get at that time may not come back some other time. So if you don't pour them out at that time, sometime else you may want them to come out and they may not be there. But once you pour them out as much as you can, I mean, like he said, the whole world, trimming them should not be a problem. For any particular production sphere, you can always trim them for serial episodes, like he said, or individual episodes. It doesn't matter. But first of all, the whole idea needs to come down and out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Yeah. To me, there's no such thing as good art with limitations. So you're right. You have to get the inspiration out first. You have to tell the story first. And after you've done that, you can work with your producing partners and your networks and everybody else to figure out how to chop it up, right? But when you go to start telling your story to the world, if the first thing you do is hesitate or put barriers in front of yourself, then it automatically means you're not giving the best of yourself and the best story to the world as an artist. And so I agree with you absolutely. And remember, just as a writer, you're entirely allowed to write down everything you dream up. It doesn't mean you have to shoot everything. Doesn't mean you have to edit everything. So yes, I agree with you fully. Go with the inspiration.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibbs, I think that is all we can take for questions. At this point in time, I would like to inform you that Dr. Chidi Amadwekwe is around, he's in the house, he's been listening to you. He's the Managing Director, Chief Executive, Nigerian Film Corporation. So I will invite him now to give us a few remarks. I think you will see him when he comes up. Dr. Amadwekwe, sir, MD. Please, let's put our hands together for him.
Thank you, CEO, the content manufacturer. I just want to endorse the relationship between your agency and Nigerian Film Corporation. I want to endorse it, and I want to state that we want to waste time to consummate the relationship. We want, as soon as possible, within the first quarter, to start having output of the relationship. We have a film training institute based here in Jos, but we have come up with a mobile training platform which is supposed to domesticate training in all the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. So we are concerned about ramping up content development all over the country. And for a country with over 200 million people and 100 and something million could be within the youth category, you will understand why we are so much in a rush to embrace you wholesomely so that we can be well creators by being content generators. So we are really excited with the relationship, and we will do all that we need to do to make sure that when you talk about content creation, Nigeria should be the destination of choice. You know, we are a very highly diversified country with multi-ethnic variation, a country with over 360 ethnic nationalities. You can imagine that our ability in diversity in content can be quite exponential. So I wish to say that I have endorsed this relationship, and whatever needs to be done must be done urgently from our own part in order to consummate it fully. Thank you once again.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, you want to say something?
Thank
Go
you very
ahead.
much.
Go ahead.
I agree, and I also am very impatient. So yes, this will happen very fast. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gilpin, for being with us, and we hope to see you soon, physically. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Thank you very much. Please, let's put our hands together for him again. Thank you. With this, we've come to the end of the workshop sessions for today. Quick announcement. One, yesterday we were at the cinema. I'm sure so many people enjoyed the cinema yesterday. There was one particular film there, Hear Me Out. The one on the, can somebody tell us, the one, what happened there? The one on the girl child abuse, right? So we enjoyed that. So this evening, 6 o'clock, we want to make use of that time belt, 6 to 8, a lot of films listed out. So you refreshing and then be at the cinema, Silverbird Cinema, ShopRite for 6. Tomorrow is the grand finale of the film festival. I thought you would clap. Tomorrow, by the poolside where we had the opening ceremony, that is where we'll be having the closing ceremony and the awards night. And it will be transmitted live on NTA network and other networks and other social platforms. So please invite your friends to watch us, and it's going to be a memorable night. But before then, in the morning, we are going to have a workshop on intellectual property and content distribution protection in the morning. And we are going to use the poolside. We'll have to vacate this place. We'll use the poolside for that workshop session, and it starts 9 o'clock. So our coordinators should take note. So we'll see you tomorrow. But tonight, let's meet at the cinema. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. Okay, the lecture will be, tomorrow's lecture will be taken by Professor Bankole Shodipo, and he is around, so we have to get ready for him tomorrow. Thank you very much. No worry, no, we'll do it. We are starting with Shodipo. Yes. Don't worry. But once the crowd is there.
No, what I mean, okay, so
So, no,
immediately,
you are